Happy fall. It is officially autumn. I'm so excited. This is my absolute favorite time of year. It is actually a really cold, gray, gloomy day today, which I'm so happy about. I'm gonna go to the library and pick up my first book on my fall TBR, the most magical time of year. I am so excited for apple picking, pumpkin patches, fall foliage, farm stands, reading by candlelight, and jack-o'-lanterns. So I thought I would share some of my favorite movies and TV shows and books and just activities and things I'm looking forward to this fall, things that really just get me into the fall spirit and channel all the fall vibes. I tried to think of ones that don't get mentioned a lot, so these aren't necessarily the classics, but more some underappreciated recommendations. So starting off with movies, my first recommendation is this is a family drama starring Cher, Winona Ryder, and Christina Ricci, just an iconic trio. It's set in a small town in Massachusetts and is kind of a outgoing, over-the-top mom, neurotic teenager duo, a little bit like Gilmore Girls, but a bit weirder and darker. It's super quirky and cozy. It was filmed in fall on location in Massachusetts, and they move into this big old house in the woods, which is one of my dream houses. It's just one of my favorites for this time of year, and really funny and heartwarming and a little weird. It's a little bit unhinged, but overall just really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a 1960s film set in Tokyo. It's about an aging widower who is coming to terms with the fact that his daughter will need to marry. It's widely considered to be one of the greatest films ever made. It's very slow and melancholy and human. The lighting and coloring in this movie is incredible. It's so immersive and atmospheric. It's not necessarily a rewatchable, but it's definitely something you should watch at least once. It's very bittersweet and very much a slice of life kind of film.
Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer now presents this most human story of a boy, a girl, and a horse in all the warm tenderness of its modest, unpretentious sincerity.
This is a 1940s film starring teenage Elizabeth Taylor as a horse girl. She's right up there with the top horse girls, honestly. It's like probably Felicity Merriman, the girl from Flicka, and Elizabeth Taylor in National Velvet. That's the Mount Rushmore of horse girls, for those wondering. But it's very cozy. It's set in a small English village, very equestrian, lots of galloping through fields and hanging out in stables. It's just a very fun girlhood coming-of-age movie, and it was written by a woman, so that's fun.
You allowed to be in here?
No.
This was directed and written by a woman, and you can tell. It's set at an all-girls boarding school in the 60s with a great ensemble cast. Basically, the girls learn that the school is going to become co-ed, and they want to protest boys coming to their school, so it leads to all of this like mischief and hijinks and troublemaking. It's got a great 90s like punk teen edge. It's really fun and kind of off the wall, and just a celebration of teen girls being bratty and messy and ambitious and just making trouble. This movie was kind of killed by Harvey Weinstein and Miramax and was sent straight to video and got no publicity, so I feel like it's really underappreciated as one of the better teen girl movies. This is like a way better, what's that one with Emma Roberts? Boarding school, you're on the phone with Wild Child. Much better Wild Child, much better Mean Girls. I wouldn't say it ages perfectly. There are definitely jokes that are a little uncomfortable, but overall I would recommend.
You know, Philip, I get quite intrigued when people don't answer questions, and quite curious. Did you ask me a question? Yes, Philip, I asked you a question.
I would recommend any Hitchcock for this time of year, but I think this one is a little lesser known than the classics like Psycho, and I really like it. It's set during a dinner party of prep school classmates who are trying to commit the perfect murder, and it takes place during real time. It feels like it's one long take, which is really cool, just a very unusual way to shoot a movie, and also a really cool way to experience the kind of like psychological thriller genre, because you feel like you're literally at this party and going through this crazy experience. I haven't read The Secret History, but based on what I know about it, I think this is kind of a similar vibe. Kind of dark academia, intellectual elitism turned murderous, and the juxtaposition of very good buttoned up boys and uncivilized brutality. Kind of Lord of the Flies vibes, but much better in my opinion. I don't love that book, and I love this movie. And way more gay. This is a queer film.
Do you or do you not love me?
Oh, Elaine. Elaine, how could you say such a thing? Darling, of course I love you. Do you? Yes, darling.
This is a 1940s screwball comedy, but it's actually very spooky to me. It's like my favorite movie to watch in October. It stars Cary Grant, king of the screwball comedies, and he gives one of the funniest performances of all time. He plays a theater critic who has fallen in love with the minister's daughter, and they get married on Halloween, and they head home to their neighborhood to stop in before going on their honeymoon to Niagara Falls, and they encounter this kind of crazy cast of characters and get caught up in all of this kind of spooky black comedy hijinks mischief. Keep saying hijinks and mischief. Does anyone say that? If you're like me and you don't like anything too spooky or horror this time of year, this movie for me is the perfect balance of like spooky and macabre, but also so silly and delightful.
Barbie, don't do it at my house.
Lorna?
No, I'm the worst. Really.
Excuse me. Do you play?
Sure.
This is a coming-of-age movie about 3 young waitresses who work together at a pizza place, Mystic Pizza in Connecticut. Set during fall, it's again super cozy, small New England town. It's also a coastal small town, so it's very misty, lots of great sweaters, very atmospheric, just very fun. I especially love Lily Taylor in this. I think she's so fantastic. Julia Roberts is obviously an icon and a great rewatchable. So now going into TV shows, one of my favorites to watch this time of year is a show called Columbo. It's a 1960s-70s crime procedural about an LA homicide detective, and I just love it. And one of the things that's interesting is that every episode, for the most part, starts with the murder. So you know who the murderer is and how it all happened, and you watch Columbo, the detective, put the pieces together and figure it out and catch the murderer. So it's more of a how catch him instead of a who done it. So not super suspenseful, and it is a little formulaic and corny at times. Like Columbo has these one-liners he says every episode, but I think it's so fun. There is like a sinister spookiness to it, but it's so campy that I find it to be kind of like a comfort watch. It's just kind of cozy and fun. And I just love the 70s of it all. I love the hair and the makeup and the houses. There are some great houses. Most of the murderers are wealthy, and they have these like fantastic mid-century modern estates or like vacation cabins in the woods or like fantastic penthouse apartments. So if you like mid-century modern vintage procedurals, this is like my number one. My next recommendation is the sitcom Cheers. This is obviously an iconic sitcom, but if you haven't watched it, it's so cozy. It's set in Boston. It's mostly filmed on one set, which is the bar Cheers, but especially the first couple seasons I would recommend. I've not watched all of the seasons. It's not a timeless comedy, but for the most part, I still find it really funny and entertaining. I think it kind of loses its chemistry after a few seasons, but I would definitely recommend the first couple. And Diane Chambers is just one of my favorite TV characters of all time. I love the way that Shelley Long plays her. I think she's so funny, and it's a great comfort watch. And lastly, Friday Night Lights. This is the fall TV show for me. It's set in a small town in Texas and is about the town's relationship with the high school football team. The way that it's shot just makes me so nostalgic for like the early 2000s Texan childhood I never had. It feels like a documentary. It has like kind of a handheld shaky camera, and so you just get so immersed in this world. It's also just like a very regional, it's almost like an ethnography the way that it's done. It's such a study of the characters and issues of class and gender and race. The first season especially is like a perfect season of television. If you just watch the first season, it's so compelling. It builds so well. The drama is executed so well. It's so captivating. Like, it's one of those shows when I watch it, I am in it. Like, I am a character in the world. I live in this town. I think about the characters when I'm not watching the show. Like, it just like fully transports you, and I can't recommend it enough. Talk about it all the time. Dress up as them for Halloween. I love Friday Night Lights. So I just have a few books I wanted to share. The first is Northanger Abbey. This is a Jane Austen novel. I think it's one of her more underrated or underappreciated ones, but to me this is the best satire. This is her funniest book. It is a parody of 19th century Gothic literature. It has like a kind of spooky Gothic vibe, but it's also totally a spoof on that, so it's just really fun. I remember reading this book for the first time in high school and like laughing out loud, and I don't normally laugh out loud at books. This one just tickled me. It's just so silly and readable. If you're not a Jane Austen fan or you don't read a lot of classic 19th century literature, I would definitely recommend this as an entry point because it's genuinely entertaining and funny and fun. My Sister the Serial Killer. This is a book that I remember sitting down, starting it, and not getting up until I finished, which doesn't happen a lot for me. It's not super suspenseful, but it's just like really compelling, gripping writing. It's set in Nigeria. It's about two sisters, one of whom keeps killing her boyfriends. And I just love the like dark, sarcastic humor. This is like just my kind of humor. So if you like that too, this is just really good. The writing is really compelling. It's super fast paced. It's not crazy dark or disturbing. It's just like the perfect balance to me of black comedy thriller, and just very smart and thought-provoking. Definitely one of my favorites of all time. The Tiger in the Well. This is the third in the Sally Lockhart series by Philip Pullman, who's obviously very well known for The Golden Compass, but I really like this series. I like it a little bit more, and I really like this. If you like historical mysteries set in England, I would definitely recommend this. It takes place in the fall of 1881, very Dickensian. Lots of sneaking through streets, underground political meetings, sinister estates, very charming, very fast-paced, lots of rich, full characters. Sally Lockhart is a great heroine, very headstrong, opinionated, that kind of thing. Understood Betsy is a kid's book by Dorothy Canfield Fisher, who is a very interesting figure in American literature. She is the one who brought the Montessori method to the US, and those kinds of teachings and beliefs are very present in this book. It is about a young girl who is sent away from her kind of overbearing, stuffy Victorian aunts to live with relatives on a farm in Vermont, and she kind of thrives in this natural environment and gains a lot of self-confidence and just kind of comes out of her shell. This book was very important to me as a child. It's still very important to me as an adult. It's such a cozy, wonderful read for this time of year. She makes butter, she boils maple syrup, she plays with the farm animals. It's just delightful and very moving and a wonderful story. Little House in the Big Woods is the first in the Little House book series and my favorite for fall. I read these books a lot as a kid, and I remember thinking that they were just kind of about like olden times and how people lived back then, and rereading them as an adult, I've realized how a very specific lifestyle and a very specific like movement that people were a part of in the 19th century, and how unique their lifestyle actually was, and how much they were kind of homesteading the way people do now and like going off the grid and living a very anti-modern life. I don't want to overly romanticize this book because the Ingalls were settling on stolen land and there are racist depictions in these books, but I just think they're a very valuable primary resource about people participating in this movement. And this first book is the coziest and most fun to read for this time of year. It is before they move west, so they still have like neighbors and family, and they have like barn dances and the sugaring off, and I just love it for learning about like seasonal practices and food storage and how you would prepare for winter, but just a very valuable, interesting resource overall. So I thought I'd share a little bit of the music that I like to put on this time of year that helps me feel very fall. I enjoy vintage classics like Autumn in New York, which is Joe Stafford, and September of My Years, which is Frank Sinatra. I also enjoy more recent pop hits, like Evermore obviously is the album for me for this time of year, but also The Good Witch by Maisie Peters, Guts by Olivia Rodrigo, Back to Black by Amy Winehouse, some indie stuff like Emotions and Math by Margaret Glaspie, the Fleet Foxes album, which I think is just called Fleet Foxes, and some pop rock albums from like my Tumblr years. Time in my life where I spent a lot of time saving Effie Stoneham outfits. Never seen that show in my life, but that girl could dress. If you followed the style of Aria, Jade, and Effie, we would get along. That's like a very important trio to me. So like Nighttime, My Time, Sky Ferreira, and Light Me Up by The Pretty Reckless. Jenny Humphrey, add her to the list. And then for activities, my favorite activity this time of year is knitting. I have some knitting projects I'm really excited about. I want to try knitting socks. I've seen these socks on Pinterest, and I have to have them. I have to make them. I think this would be a good use of all my leftover yarn, and the apples are so perfect. And I also want to try knitting a KJP sweater. I've seen these on Pinterest as well, and I don't have anything like truly this fall in my wardrobe with like an actual fall motif, so I want to try to make one of these, and I love making sweaters. So far I've only ever made sweaters from American Girl dolls, but I would like to make a pumpkin sweater or a maple leaf sweater. Baking is also my number one fall activity, so I want to actually make apple pie this year. It's always been a dream of mine to go apple picking and come home and make an apple pie, and I haven't done it yet, so this is the year. I've also seen really cool like top of pie what are those called? The decorations on top of the apple pie. I've seen some really cool ones on Pinterest, especially this like celestial one. I don't know what it is about like the moon, like celestial things, but they get me so excited. Like, would have loved to take astronomy in the astronomy tower at Hogwarts. Would have been sick. I also want to try to make my own pumpkin spice latte and make my own apple cider donut. And I also want to make the cake from Kiki's Delivery Service and then watch Kiki's Delivery Service while I'm eating the cake. I love matching food with movie viewings. That's like top tier activity. And then I also have some old cookbooks that have like old seasonal menus. Like the Betty Crocker cookbook has recommendations for cakes to make during fall, like Halloween cake, and other old cookbooks as well. So I like trying to cook through old menus this time of year and pretend like I'm dining in the early 20th century. Alright, so those are my recommendations. I hope you found something new in there or just got a little bit excited about the arrival of fall. It is finally here, and I will be back soon with more fall content. Probably something having to do with the things I talked about in this video. Right, later skaters.